Well, welcome to the Energizing America Podcast, where we talk all things energy and why we need it in our business, communities, and life. Today we're going to sit with Will Frank out here in the Bakken and talk about a day in the life of an I&E Tech. So with that, Will Franks, you have worked with us for how long?
4.5 years.
How did you survive COVID? We kept you during that time?
Yeah, I don't know why, but you guys kept me.
All right. So before you came to Wescom, though, you had nothing to do with automation, right?
Or electrical.
You were out working where?
Well, I was doing water transfer, like on-site water transfer, long haul water transfer, not in trucks or anything like that.
Okay. So you were out here in North Dakota. You're not a native North Dakotan.
No.
What brought you out to North Dakota?
That work, sent someone my resume to spice it up. And just like we are now, desperate for people. He's like, wow, I could just hire you. All right.
So how did you find that job?
He was the branch manager. The buddy I was going to send the resume to punch up. Oh. He was the branch manager at that company.
So you knew somebody in North Dakota who told you, hey, come over here. We got money happening in North Dakota.
Yeah.
You moved here with your wife. Or were you married at the time?
Yep.
You were?
One of the kiddos.
Had one of the kiddos. So you go to work doing water transfer stuff, and that kind of got you introduced to the oil field?
Really on the outside of it, honestly. Didn't know how anything worked, just showed up, did what we were told, and left.
So it's got to be wildly different today compared to 4.5 years ago when you first started, but especially when you first started at your last company on the outside. So you come in, and what did you start as, an electrical apprentice at the time?
When I was in the Army, I was an electronic tech over there. So he brought me in and put me with Carrie.
Okay, so with another automation tech.
Yeah.
So how did you find Wescom?
Well, again, it's who you know, right?
Yeah.
So I ended up being friends with Durno.
Okay.
And he introduced me to you guys to be brought on as an apprentice. And you guys brought me on as an automation apprentice.
And if I recall correctly, 4.5 years ago, which is the same exact situation today, we are in high need of automation folks. So you really don't need a strong skill set to start out in the oil field. You just need willingness. And that is one thing you definitely had, an initiative.
The burn to get it done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Get out of the truck and figure it out and ask a ton of questions. That's something you guys did for me, and then that's something that I try to do for other people. As long as I have people to actually, support them. Certainly don't want to hire someone who doesn't know what they're doing and then watch them sink their own ship because I couldn't provide resources. I don't want to be responsible for that.
It's really not cool giving somebody an opportunity if you can't truly support that opportunity you gave them, because now you stole an opportunity.
Yeah.
Frankly, you put them out to fail, and now they've wrecked their name. As you know, in the oil field, your name is...
everything.
Yeah.
Well, now that you're in the oil field, right, compared to that last job, now that I know I'm in the oil field, everyone knows everybody out here.
They do, and they associate people rarely with companies. They associate people with the person. Yeah. So in other words, some companies you work for, if you work at Home Depot, when people talk about Home Depot, they're not talking about the clerk at Home Depot. They're talking about Home Depot.
Right.
When people talk about an oil field services company, they're not talking about Wescom. They're talking about Will Franks. And typically, if Will Franks moves on, so does the client, if he's good enough. And that's a pretty big if when we're talking about Will Franks. Right. I'm just kidding. As an automation tech, you come on board, no oil field automation experience. You start working with some of our automation techs. You get thrown on some producer stuff. 4.5 years later, you're running the entire automation division for us out here in North Dakota. Having a heck of a time growing it simply because we can't find people. But we have grown significantly in the last year.
We say we can't grow, but this is still the most techs we've ever had in the Bakken. It's hard to get qualified people so that we can train the people that we know they have it and they can learn it and they can do it. And we have those guys. We just need guys who already know it to train them.
When you say we need guys who already know it, what is it? They know how to turn on a computer, or they know how to get into Ellen Bradley software?
Turning on a computer is a great start.
That's a good start.
If you can log into one too, we're cooking.
Overqualified in the Bakken of North Dakota in 2023 if you can turn the computer on.
Yeah. Right now we need people who understand Rockwell fundamentally and can get in and edit things in there. We don't need anybody who can write a program, but we need people who are very comfortable and confident inside of a controller. There's so much equipment out here, so many different kinds of controllers. We also want someone who's looking to not be bored, because you won't be. There's no such thing as knowing everything you're doing. You need base fundamentals, years of experience in base fundamentals and troubleshooting and how these things are supposed to operate, because you're going to go out and see 57 different kinds of instruments from different manufacturers operate differently that use totally different things. We have customers who use 5 different kinds of controllers, use 5 different kinds of programming languages.
And what's fascinating about it is they're always getting ready to standardize, right? So here's Rev 4. This standard will be deployed across all well pads, and you will now know exactly how to do a well pad. And you go to the next well pad, and well, it turns out the equipment didn't arrive, and plus this operator, this pumper doesn't really like this instrument, so we're switching it up a little bit. But that's why you need that base knowledge of what is the instrument actually supposed to do, so that it can go into the program and ensure that's what it's doing.
Our second biggest customer out here on the automation side, there's just a company who bought 4 different oil fields. Everything's very different, vastly different from one to another.
And are they going through trying to standardize all of them?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I don't know.
Let's just keep these things running is their point, and they kind of expect you to know how to operate all of it.
That's a big task. It's a big ask on standardizing that field. It's massive.
Yeah, and it's not cheap either. It's interesting in the automation world because we get a lot of resumes and folks will call themselves an automation tech. And they're actually more of a programmer person. Like they never actually want to go out in the field. They want to sit in an office and build I'm going to use terms I don't even know anything about, but like they want to get into ladder logic and build a nice, cute program. But they don't actually, at the end of the day, they don't want to go out on location and ensure that program is doing what it's supposed to do and or troubleshoot it. And then sometimes you get these programmers like, hey, I'm a programmer, but I actually want to be an automation tech. They come in and all of a sudden they got to go out in the 20 below weather and it's not so cool to get out of the truck and actually go troubleshoot it.
Right.
Because the word automation tech gives you this illusion. Must be pulling up in your nice F-150s in the nice heated cab with your fancy setups and you log into a computer and you make black screens go all over the place, and allegedly as you're buying and selling Bitcoin and mining, you're supposedly doing something out on this well pad. It turns out that's not actually what happens.
No, sometimes people come up to the door and you
interrupt.
got to like interact with them too. And then you got to roll the window back up. It's a labor-intensive job. No, that's actually the initial job posting that we had last year requested that we not call it an automation tech. We called it an I&E so that people be more inclined to realize that you're going to be out. What makes it kind of difficult here is the more I've read resumes and gone through Indeed, you have people who are very qualified or overqualified, but maybe in a different, like slightly different field. You can bring those guys on and train them pretty easily. They didn't realize that they had to get out of that truck, or they didn't realize they needed to have some sort of fundamental understanding of how you do electrical work. And then you have the other side, of course. They don't know what they're doing, but they sure like to pretend that they do. The more I've seen it, we kind of do an awful lot more than how those roles are generally defined out here. So when we're talking about, hey, we need someone who, fully capable of getting in a program and, we got to write a little bit here and a little stuff there. Maybe we got to edit the HMI and bring those alarms and triggers in. Other industries call those electrical engineers. Those guys usually aren't overly keen on then being told like, hey, we got to help out the electricians here a little bit, go pull some wire, and then we're going to terminate this panel.
They don't think that's very cool.
Not super awesome. Honestly, it's a lot of fun. At no point are you bored. You have a ton of troubleshooting calls, a ton of maintenance calls. You're always finding something that you haven't seen or that you're pretty sure you've seen and you knew how to work on. And then suddenly it's doing something very different. And you're like, wow, okay. I know now. If you like trying to figure stuff out, this job is fun.
Life as an I&E tech, you kind of mentioned you need a base understanding of electrical. You need, an ideal person. That's what an I&E tech looks like. Of course, we have those random opportunities where somebody like yourself with none of that can come in and work himself through the entire program and end out as a very capable, knowledgeable I&E manager. But when you talk about an actual day in the life of one of your I&E techs, they're getting up at 5 a.m. They're headed out to location. They're there by 7:30, 8 o'clock. What are they doing?
It just depends. One customer we have, they have the direct report go to them, and he kind of handles everything. We got 2 guys over there, soon to be 3, and he just kind of handles most of the stuff. I just show up, give free stuff out to people, and
sweatshirts and hats and Shields gift cards and such.
Smile.
Yeah.
And then,
so what do you mean by they report directly to the client's office, and the client has a list of issues that have either happened in the last 24 hours that he got notified about from the field, or he's just noticing things that he would like upgraded? Like, what kind of work is the client given those direct reports?
So like our clients, how we try to operate with the clients is we like to have the clients to send out some sort of like week-long plan. So we know what we're doing. We know what we are probably working on, but maintenance comes up all the time. That client that we were talking about earlier, they're constantly doing maintenance. They have a guy who's almost exclusively doing maintenance. And so his running task is to install radios, but he doesn't do that very much. If he ever has downtime, though, he gets to go and install those radios.
So when that particular person is doing a maintenance call, what comes to mind when you say a maintenance call? What is he doing?
This pressure transmitter on the wellhead is not coming in anymore. Can you go figure out what's going on? You go out there. Sometimes the pressure transmitter has failed. Sometimes it's frozen. Sometimes, water got in the GUAT. That's a very basic one. Sometimes you go out and someone reported that a kill isn't doing what it's supposed to. And you log into the program and you realize that, that kill hasn't worked for 4.5 years.
It just had never been tested. No one had ever tried.
Right. Yeah. And someone put a no-op on front of that rung, and so that would never run. Why'd they do that? You can guess. Maybe something went bad and then they just I don't feel like replacing that today, so
I'm going to put this there and I'm going to remember to come back and fix it in the future.
And then never do that.
So literally you've found some sites where the kills have not even worked for the last 4 years.
Oh, absolutely. I've found locations where pressure transmitters have been swapped for years. They're just getting the wrong values at all times.
So when you have to go replace a pressure transmitter, your I&E Tech is doing that, right? Does he sometimes have to run and go get a pressure transmitter from the client's yard? And so lots of windshield time probably running back and forth in an I&E's life?
There is quite a bit of windshield time, unless you have a set task for doing a new build or something like that. It just depends on how much windshield time you like. It depends on the customer too. Some customers have locations that are extremely close together and the shop's right there too. So there's not as much screen time as you think. And then we got another customer who's just, they're spread from Canada to Dickinson.
So if I'm a new I&E Tech and you send me out and I gotta go troubleshoot a pressure transmitter, I get out on location, probably have to do a JSA, might have to check in with the PIC. Although most of these are running operating facilities, so they're probably pretty quiet. Are you out by yourself a lot?
All the time.
You're out all the time by yourself.
Almost all the guys are out by themselves unless they're training someone.
And so a lot of alone time. You get out, you try and figure out this pressure transmitter, start running some stuff, make sure there's no moisture in there, make sure the pressure transmitter is good, and then you log into the program, maybe see if the value is just not getting pulled over for some reason or pulled into the SCADA system.
Whatever. Or SCADA system, pump off controller, PLC, whatever happens to be pulling it.
So you do some of that work, you get the thing replaced. Maybe it takes you, 3 hours? You call your boss Will again or your direct report at the client and say, hey, I'm done, now what? Or are they we're so busy that you got work stacked ahead of you? You're actually just calling the client and telling them, yeah, I know, I'm just not done yet. Is that more typical?
Man, it totally depends on the day and what's going on. There's sometimes you got maintenance orders stacked up and you're just trying to scramble to get them all. And sometimes you call and let them know that you're done and they're like, all right, good job.
Okay.
Go do your preset task.
What if I'm out there working on that pressure transmitter and it's a new style transmitter that I'm not familiar with? How do I deal with that? Do I call my boss Will and Will walks me through it, or you run out and help me out? What does an I&E Tech do when they're out on a location and they're stuck?
I've absolutely done both those things. We'll provide support in any way, shape, or form that we can. And the team that we have out here, we communicate. We're alone a lot, but we get together a lot on the side, and we spend an awful lot of time giving each other crap.
That's weird that you are leading that division and you're okay with that, but go ahead.
I mean, have you met me, Shane?
Yeah, well, I got a trophy from you once.
Yeah, I've already warned you and Calvin, if the company gets too much more professional, I probably won't be welcome here anymore. No, everyone gets along extremely well. We had a guy who had to leave, and he was in his 50s, and he said this was the best place he'd worked. We're one of the best places he'd ever worked. It meant a lot to me.
This wasn't his first job.
No, but you'll have a ton of support.
So you can call each other.
Absolutely.
Hey, have you ever ran into this issue?
All the time. I call Sean, I call Zach on stuff that I haven't seen or stuff that I've forgotten and should have remembered.
Have you ever had to call Calvin?
I've called Calvin too. We can usually keep everything in-house here, and then if something's brought up to me and I think it could or should go to Calvin, I'll usually call Calvin. I know Calvin's busy, and so try to funnel that. But we have enough guys down here. We usually figure most stuff out.
That's awesome that you guys are willing to share that information amongst each other and experience. I've sat in a lot of meetings with clients and just different ones like, what's your qualification program for your automation techs? And you're like, on-the-job experience? Does that kind of on-the-job training? I mean, I don't know how to answer that question, because I could spend millions of dollars training these people on a very specific set of equipment, and the very next day you get an email that they're no longer using that. And then you're wondering why I didn't train people on this Emerson product or this other, on-the-job training is the way it is in the I&E Tech world.
And school training absolutely has its place, and I've met guys who are school trained and they're extremely good, but until you get into the field, just like everything else, until you get the field experience, it's different.
So should people go to school? If you want to be an I&E Tech, should you take that I&E program that local community colleges offer? Is there any benefit in that?
I think so. Absolutely. it can give you a real leg up. I definitely take a second look at resumes of guys or gals who had taken that course because they have fundamentals. Oh, they understand how electricity works too. Like there's more than just the I&E portion of it. They have a fundamental understanding of how the job needs to operate on a larger scale. Now, with that, like the people who go to school for it, we're looking at hiring someone. I think right now, I've requested that he be put in new construction instead for the first month or two, so he can get a real experience on that side of things. Yeah, hiring someone who just does I&E or automation or programming is great. Specializing is awesome, but we still need to have an understanding of what's going on around us because we are the last line of defense on everything. And so we need to know what to look for and how to identify stuff when it's not working correctly or when it might cause a problem.
So when you say we're the last line of defense, and I love using we because, I just go ahead and throw myself in your camp.
Of course. You're wearing a hard hat today, right?
Yeah. So when we're the last line of defense, meaning that if something goes poorly on that location, hopefully there's a piece of equipment automated that does something based on this parameter going awry. I don't know, wells overpressurized so it automatically shuts down because we're so cool. We set up a program that says if pressure gets to X, shut down site.
Yeah, the automation is used for information and everyone likes charts and to see what's going on, but fundamentally that's there for safety. Everything there is there to shut something down if something goes wrong. And it's our responsibility, it's our name next to this shut down the way it was supposed to.
Right, and we have to take that pretty seriously when we're out on locations.
Absolutely.
So you can support each other by calling each other, and I actually remember one time I caught you calling Calvin, and this was maybe a couple years ago. You were trying to get a LACT unit maybe up and running by noon, and this was like 11:50, and I happened to stop at the well pad. And you're like making screens fly all over, and you were feeling a little bit under pressure, and you're trying to figure out why this motor maybe went.
Yeah, the VFD, I remember this, it was a VFD that wasn't ramping up correctly. We were supposed to start, on that particular thing, we were supposed to start at a 30 hertz instead of 0. And it wasn't ramping correctly because of the programming was built for that. I called Calvin. You're right, I was under a ton of pressure. I was trying to get this done. This was the first large project for this customer. And so I wanted to make sure it was going right. That's a perfect example of someone needing to not have an ego. Because Calvin's like, well, what about your minimum speed reference? Yeah, okay, Calvin, yep, that's the thing I'm looking for. Thanks, bye. I knew it was there.
Yeah, pressure on a job can just cause us to sometimes back up from the most basics because our brain is not operating. But I thought that was really cool that day just simply because, I seen two things. I saw somebody willing to help, but I saw something even more important. That was somebody asking for help. And that is not something that is inherent in everybody. A lot of us just start out like, I want to make a name for myself, and the last thing I'm going to do is ask a question. But our I&E techs, we like them to be comfortable asking those questions. So they might show up on a job, they replace a pressure transmitter. Are we working long days, set schedules, or do you got to be pretty flexible?
Pressure transmitters are by far the easiest and most simple example of what we have. That was just off the top of my head. And everything else is much more fun.
What's wrong with the pressure transmitter? To me, that's like easy.
That's boring.
Okay. And I&E techs like to be challenged?
Well, the ones that I want do.
Okay,
absolutely.
Good.
The ones that have to be out here do.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you get overwhelmed.
Because there's not very much boring work.
No. There's a lot of different stuff. And if you want to work in a manufacturer where you do 3 things.
That's where a paper mill or a lumber mill or a specific facility, plant environment might fit that I&E tech better.
And out here, you gotta like a challenge, and you don't have to like chaos, but it helps.
What do you mean by chaos? You're working long days, short days, your phone's ringing off the hook. What's chaos?
It all depends on how cold it is outside. The first cold snap of the year, usually, we're working a pretty long shift on that one, 14, 16 hours, something like that. Normally we work about 12s. It just depends on the urgency of either the project or the maintenance. The projects that we have, they're usually planned out. So unless we have messed something up or someone misplanned something, or a million things can go wrong on a project, we usually work in 12s.
Okay. And are you working weekends?
Depends.
Okay.
Sometimes we'll work weekends at request of the customer, but normally we're not. And that being said, if you want to work weekends, the opportunity is there. There's work.
You're letting your guys drive that conversation.
Absolutely.
That's how flexible you are.
Yeah, it's their lives.
Yeah.
As long as the customer's happy and the guys are supported, I feel like I've done my job. That's what I'm here to do. Kind of the same policy you guys have. The guys will let me know if they need time off. If that's a conflict or a real problem, I'll see if they can move it. If they can't, well, guess what I'm doing that weekend? And there's enough respect there that there's been times where I've had to ask guys, like, hey, can you you can push that like a day. It's give and take.
I think that's why you have, from my opinion, within Wescom, one of the most energetic, like fun-moving teams is because you're all watching out for each other. You step in when you need each other's help, whether it's delay your vacation a day or take somebody's weekend because their wife is in the hospital, whatever. You're in constant communication and you got each other's back. What in the last 4.5 years has been your biggest surprise about being an I&E?
I just knew when I started, I knew I liked doing this stuff. I liked troubleshooting when I was in the military. And I didn't expect to love it as much as I did, to the point where when you guys offered me the management position, I didn't want to take it. It took me probably like 3 weeks to get my answer back to you guys to step out of it. It's fun.
What makes it fun? Is it the win feel? Like when you get something?
Absolutely. I mean, there's nothing worse than going out and trying to figure something out and not figuring it out. But there's nothing better than having a difficult task in front of you, especially one where other people have failed on it and you figure it out. That rush is great.
It's so funny how that is, because we could go out and fix something that no one else knows about even. And you have a little internal win, like, oh, that was cool. But yeah, somebody else has done it.
Yeah.
And then you go do it and you actually get it done.
Yeah.
It feels like the biggest massive win that anyone could have.
Yeah, it's because it's two things. When you go and figure something out that was really difficult for you, you feel a sense of accomplishment. And when you do it when someone else has done it, you get to feel smug at the same time.
Exactly. So a day in the life of an I&E Tech, be flexible, be prepared. Your days are challenging. All kinds of different requests are going to come across. Lots of new equipment. I don't feel like we've ever stopped learning. I've been in the Bakken for going on 10 years, and the locations just never, ever stop changing. I don't care how many times one of the producers will tell me that, I just sat in a meeting yesterday afternoon in Dickinson, and this company's telling me that this is Rev 4 and this plan is sweet. And so then we go have a pre-construction meeting for a facility we're starting in 3 weeks, and none of the equipment for Rev 4 showed up. So we're actually using Rev 3, but we have to take equipment from a different site, and we're going to bring the Rev 2 equipment over to that site. Like there's this huge hula hoop thing going on, and I'm just laughing thinking, these people in this room have no idea I just left a meeting where their corporate team is so excited that they're using Rev 4 on their next facility. And now I'm sitting in this construction meeting. We're not. And in fact, we're combining Rev 2, Rev 3, and some of Rev 4. Who knows what the facility will look like when it's done? And I'm sure the I&E techs that go to work on that facility in the future will have to know all 3 different Revs, because that's what they're going to be dealing with.
They'll probably have to know whatever Frankenstein monster that they create to get that location working pretty well, because they're gonna get Rev 4 from Denver or wherever it was and look at it. All right, well, that's not gonna work, is it?
Yeah.
Just start taking pieces and parts from everywhere else. There's only been one company out here that I've ever seen actually standardize, almost like an 80% standardization for what they have.
Really?
Yeah.
When you are done working, what is North Dakota? You lived where before you came to North Dakota? Idaho. So North Dakota, you're over in Minot. Yeah. There's other areas, like our shop is in Watford. We work in Newtown, Mandaree, Dickinson area. We're up in Williston where we have a shop. What's North Dakota like for you and your family?
I like it quite a bit. The family likes it too. Got great friends, got just enough to do in Minot, got a lot of hunting, got a lot of outdoor activities. And yeah, it gets pretty cold in the winter, but there's a great job of facilitating stuff to do in these places. Like Watford has this massive
Rough Rider Center. Place is awesome.
The biggest community center I've ever seen. I went to a soccer tournament, took my son there last weekend to Williston. They have one that's almost as nice.
It's just not as new.
No.
But it's been renovated inside.
It's fantastic. It looks great inside. I was like, oh.
Who knew in Williston there's something to do? Yeah,
yeah.
The reason why I asked that question, Will, is because when I visit with folks and tell them about North Dakota, there's this feeling of like, oh, who wants to just go work on a flat piece of ground where the wind howls? Like, man, you guys, you don't actually know the North Dakota I know. The western North Dakota is a beautiful place to be. Does it get cold here? Oh, yeah. But do we have some beautiful days here? Yeah, I've rode my bike out in the Badland areas. I've done hiking out there. I've unfortunately been out with Lane, wondering if I was going to come back alive. I've had a lot of fun activity out in the great state of North Dakota. It's not what people maybe perceive it to be.
The spring, summer, and fall, there's a ton to do. And there's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of beauty out here. In the winter, you look around, there's no trees. And then in springtime, you're like, whoa, I forgot that there actually are trees here.
Yeah,
it's a great place. For myself, the biggest problem was lack of mountains. Just because I grew up in Idaho, we have Sawtooth's right there. They're huge. They're all over the place. The western part has the Badlands.
You get that mountainous feel, not really.
Yeah, well, okay. I still have an issue when people call these mountains.
Do they
personally?
call them mountains?
Yes.
And that
you go to the Killdeer Mountains. Like, I've been to the Killdeer Hills. Like, I don't know what you're talking about.
if you were to visit with yourself 6.5 or 8 years ago, whenever it was that you started poking around at possibly coming over to North Dakota, did you ever think you would be in a computer world? Or had the Army really done that to you, that you knew you wanted to end in that arena? I mean, you're not a full-time computer person, so that's maybe the wrong word to use. But I
am now. Thanks for the management position, Shane.
Yeah. Unfortunately, due to the management position, there's a lot there. But would you have ever expected yourself to land in something like this?
I don't know. I'm not good at prognostication.
Yeah.
Who knows what I was thinking yesterday, let alone 8 years ago.
But, I think sometimes when we're young and we're looking at all the options in front of us,
right,
and those folks go to the I&E school and then they're stuck now where do I bring this, right? Well, if you have the fundamental programming knowledge and you know how to get into a program, you're steps ahead of other people.
Yeah.
If you have the grit, the willingness to get out in what I call initiative, show some initiative, get out on that location and try some things, ask some questions. We don't really prefer you start blowing up programs because we have bad things can happen really, really fast. But you are the kind of a guy who sets those expectations for people when they first go out in the field. You give them some pretty tight parameters, or do you pair them up with somebody?
We'll pair them up with someone, see where they're at versus where they said they were at, and then we'll have a conversation.
Okay.
But if we bring on someone and they, let's say that they're completely honest or straight up with us where they're at, and I put them with someone and they're like, yeah, it's where they're at. We'll just work with them from there. It doesn't matter. If you come in, if we had the opportunity to bring on someone who knew nothing and they told us they knew nothing, that's fine. It's going to take a while to learn. There's some fundamentals you got to figure out.
Yeah.
Both electrically and in the I&E and automation side. So,
do these I&E techs get to go to any education? Do you offer anything for them to help them further their knowledge?
Yeah, we offer a class after you've been here. You can go to any class of your choosing, whether it be Rockwell, Allen Bradley, or Total Flow class if you are a masochist, or rock training.
Okay.
If you really hate yourself. So that's, any of those, anything you choose within our field that we all see, you can do that. We also have a ton of resources that we've built over the last couple of years in our OneDrive. A lot of standards, a lot of standard operating procedures, a lot of walkthroughs, some training videos. I've just started another set of training videos.
And they're stored in OneDrive?
Yes.
I can go watch you on a video?
Yes.
Really? Does it show you?
I don't know why you'd want that.
That's what scares me, because maybe that's why we haven't found automation tech. I'm just kidding. So they can go watch those videos, get a heads up.
Absolutely. And again, there's always the support here. Yeah. So we bring in someone fresh, they're going to be top.
And the biggest need right now in North Dakota happens to be in early 2023. Somebody who's a little bit beyond their just starting.
I need someone beyond that as well. I need someone who can tell me they can do something. They can edit an HMI and get out here and do it.
Be willing to not just say you can edit an HMI, but be willing to go edit such HMI.
Yeah. And then when that person's editing an HMI and they run into something they haven't seen, I need that person to call me and we'll figure it out together. I probably can't help them, but I'll try.
You probably can't help them in the sense of being on site. Or
yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, I don't know. It depends.
Yeah.
I'm okay at HMI work.
Gotcha.
And there's a lot of different ways that's the thing. There's a lot of different ways to do stuff. I know we've harped on that. But
I watched a couple of different techs in our office developing an HMI, and it was hilarious. Calvin had an opinion that it should look like this, and another guy had it, and I'm like, it's an HMI. Who gives a flying, whatever. Move that thing over there. Well, then when we went to actually commission the site, this was for a compressor station. I seen why it does actually matter how an HMI is laid out and how they're built, and it's pretty remarkable. I'm constantly shocked at how little I actually know.
Me too.
Well, Calvin himself is, Will. And Calvin's been doing it for 8 years.
Yeah.
And he's still surprised at how much stuff we see.
Well, that's part of that's the fun, though, is we could sit here, Calvin, myself, all of my guys, we could sit here and say, hey, we do Allen Bradley work on compact logics. That's what we specialize in. We're good at panel view plus 7s. And we get real good at it and eventually get real bored. Where's the fun?
Right. Well,
where's the challenge?
Exactly. And I think that's what's coming down. Someday we're going to do a podcast on rock and why you'd have to hate yourself versus Ellen Bradley and why you'd love yourself, and get into the nitty and gritty of that. But I think ultimately here, I just wanted to get a sense in what is a day of an I&E Tech? What are some of the cool things about it? What's it like to be in North Dakota? And why should people even explore this as a career? I could go be a journeyman electrician. What's the difference between a journeyman electrician and an I&E Tech? Do you know? I mean, from a payroll standpoint, there's not tons of difference. I&E Techs are technically more valuable from a compensation standpoint, often, than a journeyman electrician.
It depends on the journeyman electrician.
Well, some of our I&E Techs are journeyman electricians, right?
I have a master.
So I think sometimes journeyman electricians, they can get pigeonholed into construction.
Absolutely.
And they lose out the opportunity to learn the troubleshooting side of it and how automation can impact such electrical. They kind of lose out on that opportunity if they sit in construction.
Well, and that depends. You can have a J card who's just, they don't need to know why something works or how something works. You have to have that. You have to have the urge to know why or how something works. Exactly.
So we don't want to take our journeyman and force them to be an I&E Tech. Wescom is a kind of a company that I want to know what floats will, and let's see if there's an opportunity that equals will. I don't want to take an opportunity we have and make somebody equal that opportunity. I'm looking for people that want that opportunity, not the reverse. There's an opportunity right now. I got a call from one of our clients down in the Permian Basin. He needs 2 people, I&E Techs. Doors wide open. I'll pay them whatever you can get. I just know you have access to people, and there's no one left down in the Permian Basin, in his opinion, that can help him. He's got 700 work orders sitting in his queue. He's desperate for somebody. And I told him, welcome to the club.
Yeah.
Everyone is in the same situation. And we have to think a little bit long term. Like, how are we going to get these folks, as they're going through high school, how are we going to sensationalize being an I&E Tech? How are we going to make that a thing? That's something that we can be proud of and happy to do. Problem is, that's going to be a 6-year road, right? I know I did my part. I got 7 boys, and I've told them all what they should do in life. That's going to take a while, right?
And they're not going to listen.
Because they're my own kids. Yes. But I'm paying Calvin to tell them, and they think Calvin's cool. But Dustin is actually even cooler, so they're copying whatever Dustin does. But I'm just saying, that's a long-term issue, right? In the short term, the only thing we can do is get out and educate people about what a life is of an I&E Tech. And there's probably somebody, maybe they're stuck in a manufacturing facility, showing up to the same place every day, just repeating. Half the time they're sitting on YouTube because there's no calls coming in. Get out here to North Dakota and challenge yourself. Use that base skill set and get out here and learn more, challenge yourself, grow, probably make a heck of a lot more money. We had one tech that actually left because he wanted to be closer to his family and wanted a little different change of pace, and he took a massive pay cut as a result, right? And that's great. He simply because it is what he needed.
His priority, yeah.
And his priority. And I think that's the whole point of this podcast. Hopefully, folks who are wondering what it is like to be an I&E Tech have that answer. You certainly have an answer as to what it's like to work under Will. Discouraging, despairing. Maybe a little bit of humor. You do get trophies from time to time.
Yeah, participation trophies though. You don't get trophies for doing a good job. You just get participation trophies.
That's right, mine, because you also gave the HR guy one when I was with you.
Yep.
And I thought that was not fair because I felt like I was doing a better job.
You want a bigger participation trophy?
Yeah, maybe at Christmas you can get me one. But regardless, they can come work for you and learn a ton. Hopefully they can come and experience the real Will and the real North Dakota.
Oh, yeah, I don't have a lot of fake in me. For people who are experienced who want to come over, it's a lot of fun. Again, well, that's kind of cliche, but we operate pretty closely over here, at least in our department.
You're a tight-knit group.
Yeah, we really are. You can be in a crappy job if you're surrounded by people you like. Now, here you're going to be in a job you love, surrounded by people you love, and then also hate.
That's exactly why a guy is sitting in North Dakota right now. What is it today? 5 degrees out there with the snow? Maybe a little warmer?
I don't know. I've been sitting in my truck all day.
Yeah, see? There you go. The I&E Tech, the life of an I&E guy. All right. Well, Will, thanks. We'll have to do this again.